Earlier today, I was thinking about the wonderful comments that's been left on my Celebrating Appalachia videos. Wonderful comments where you're sharing your knowledge, you're sharing your memories, your stories from your family, you're sharing great appreciation for what I'm doing. All that just makes me so happy. I'm just so thrilled every time I read a comment, and I'm so thankful for them. So I really appreciate you doing that. As I thought about them, I began to think about how some of the commenters are really close to me. You know, there's one that comes to mind lives in Peachtree, so that's not very far at all. But then there's a lot of commenters who live a far piece, as we would say. They're a far piece from where I live. Some of them even, you know, in another country. And as I got to thinking about that, how wonderful that was. What a sense of community we've created from people that live as close as Peachtree, but that people that live in another country like Ireland or Scotland or Canada or wherever it may be. So how wonderful that was. But that also got me to thinking about that, a fur piece. Well, that's a common one you'll hear in Appalachia. You'll hear somebody say, my brother, he doesn't live here anymore. He lives a fur piece from here. Or the trip was a fur piece from here, and I didn't think we'd ever get there. There's lots of other ways that we describe distance too, but I thought that I would read some of them to you as I was thinking about that. The ones that come to mind, I'm sure you'll think of ones that I didn't, and I hope you'll leave a comment and tell me about those. So we'll start with a far piece. Of course, I've got my dictionary of Smoky Mountain English. So far piece is a noun phrase, a great distance. 1940, Hawks Done. It seemed like it was a right far piece to the cave. 1959, Wheels, Hillbilly Dictionary. A long distance. It's a far piece to town, or a fur piece to town. 1962, Dykeman, Tall Woman. What I hear is it's a far piece out west and back. 1974, Fink's Bits of Mountain Speech. It's a fur piece from here. So that's a really common one that you'll hear even in my area of Appalachia, but probably throughout Appalachia that's a common one. Let's see, I've got some of them marked. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so this one is talking about, instead of a fur piece, it's talking about a short distance, a little piece. You'll also hear a little ways. So I might say just a little ways up the creek is where the first spring is. That's where we used to get our gravity water. Or you might say just a little piece up the creek. That's where we used to get our gravity water from. So 1936 in Madison County, North Carolina, and Swain County, North Carolina, that was documented using a little piece like that to describe a short distance. 1939, Hall Collection, Little Cataloochee. And so the boy broke to run, and he run a little piece. So he didn't go very far. That was Mac Hanna that said that. Smokemont, North Carolina. The dog struck, went up the creek a little piece, and treed up a little tree. They treed. The dogs treed, so they were either coon hunting or bear hunting or something like that. So the dog struck, went up a creek a little piece, and then they treed. So that's a good one. 1949. The expression a little piece is especially common in western North Carolina, whence it spread down to the coast between the Cape Fear and the PD River, I guess that is. 1958, Newton dialect vocab used by 25 of 36 speakers from East Tennessee mountains in preference to little way or little ways. So they're saying 25 out of the 36 would have said little piece instead of, I would probably say little ways. It's a little ways, but it lists both of them. So that's an interesting one, but instead of a fur piece, that's just a short distance. So here's one that can be talking about distance or about location, I guess, in a way. So it's somewheres or summers. Sometimes you'll hear people say it as summers. That's over there, Summers, near Georgia, near the Georgia line. He lives over there, Summers, near the Georgia line. That'd be what you would hear. Anyway, so a variant form is Summers, like I said. Somewhere, at some place or time, approximately. So let's see, 1814, Hartsell Journal. There was 2 companies of troops came down in boats on Thursday, the day we crossed the Tennessee River from Summers about Kingston. So that was using the Summers variation of it. 1939, Hall Collection, One-Armed Jim is right feeble. I reckon a body'll find him dead somewheres. So that one's just more like a location. They'll find him dead somewheres. We don't know where. It's not really talking about traveling. 1978, Montgomery White Pine Collection. It would be somewheres in the 20s, and then of course he was raised up completely in white pine. If you don't like the job, you can go somewheres else. 1989, Smith flying bullets. He'd always be somewheres else than where everybody thought he'd be. So that one's more like could be a location, more of a location than a distance, I guess. Definitely. This one's an interesting one. We would say it's that away or this away. So that's more of a direction than actually a distance. So we might say, let's see, 1895, Edson and Fairchild, Tennessee mountains. If the world's as big every way as she is that away, she's a whopper. That's a funny one. 1913, Cape Art, our Southern Highlanders. It was that away in my pap's time and in my grandsir's too. So that one's not really talking about a location or a direction. Let's see if we can find another one that does. 1924, Spring Lydia, Welly. She saw a star in the sky for 3 months. After a while, it turned going that away. So that was a direction. It was going that away. Let's see. In 1973, it just squeaked like that and right out that away went. I don't know what they were talking about, but 1978, Montgomery White Pine. When you're coming down that way, they ain't many places to stop. So that's just that away and this away used in a sense of direction, like telling you which that away or this way. He lives off that away instead of he lives over this away, I guess you could say. That one can be used interchangeably for sure. This one's a really fun one that talks about distance. So it's a hoop and a holler. So I would say I live a hoop and a holler from Granny and Pap's house because I live really close. But let's see what it says about it. So a hoop and a holler is a noun phrase, a short but indefinite distance. It means like you can't really put a marker on how far it is. 1952, Wilson folk speech, a short distance, a short time. He lives a hoop and a hollow from my house. 1960, Paris, just how far now? Just how far. Now when somebody tells you that it's only a hoop and a holler to so-and-so's house, make sure that you've got the day before you. It can be a short distance or a long way, is what John Paris was saying. 1961, Williams, Content, Mountain Speech. The next cabin up the creek is a hoop and a holler away. And then in 1997, Montgomery collection, it was known to 8 people that he talked to, 8 consultants that he talked to. Here's another one that's more of a direction instead of a distance, but Yanway, that way in that direction. So McCracken Logging, that was in 1974. It had to be set where it would pull off from a 45 off Yanway off this way. So how would I use Yanway? That one that you would hear here, you would definitely hear that one here in my area of Appalachia where I live. Pap said Yanway. So I might say, like if I was talking about a plane in the sky or something, did you see that jet? It just come over, it was so low and loud, and it went off Yanway, and it was gone out of sight before you could ever hear the noise from it, you know, something like that. So that's Yanway. Another one that's sort of like Yanway is yawn or yan. Sometimes you'll hear people say. So let's see, it's a variant form is yan, like I was mentioning. It's an adjective, the other, the far, or farther. So 1931, Professor learns. Of course, he says reckon and right smart and you all and quietus and pisen and yon side. 1937, Thornborough, Great Smoky Mountains, and just yan side of Bluff Mountain must be Sevierville. 1939, Hall Collection, Big Creek, North Carolina, Middlesboro is on yan side of Cumberland Gap. 1958, they logged all that big poplar timber out from the bridge yon way up to the flat with a groundhog skidder. 1967, Hall Collection, Townsend's, it's yan side of the Briar Ridge. So that's a good one. Yanway. I'd still hear Yanway more than yan or yawn. Yonder is another one that you'll hear. Again, not talking about distance as much as just direction. Over there. So let's see. 1936. Yander was known in Madison County and Swain County. Yonder in Madison County. 1937, Thornborough, Great Smoky Mountains. She's buried in the corpse yard, Yander. 1969, my daddy worked in Yander on Friesland, and he just come home about every 2 or 3 weeks. 1974, there was some trees that stood all up here and yonder about in the orchard. 1980, a girl about my age, Lola Welly, was brought here and buried right up yonder. 1989, Landry, Smoky Mountain Interviews. Bears come off the mountain right here and went on down yander. Our land went through yander and down through the picnic grounds. Sometimes you'll hear nonsense or humorous types of locations in Appalachia. Maybe it's because the speaker doesn't really know the location, or it's indefinite, or they don't know where it's at, but they're still telling something. So they might say, you know, it's over there where the creek burnt to, or maybe you know, it's over there where the little black dog stays. Well, that could be, you know, 100 different places, or even that's where the barn burnt down or the tree burnt down. Someone that reads my blog one time said his dad would say, that's where, you know, that's where, I can't remember the first name, but it was like a man's name, killed the screech owl. In other words, he meant he wasn't sure where it was at. It was just like an indefinite location. And there's all kinds of those. I'm sure you've probably heard them too. Then there's also the jokes about how that's how we give directions. I find myself doing that. I'll say, well, you know, that's where, and then they'll be like, no, I don't know, because I don't know who you're talking about. You know, you kind of take for granted that everybody knows the same people you know, or where the White House used to be, or you know, down there where they cut that big tree down, or those kind of directions. So sometimes it's just that we're not being understanding of the person that doesn't realize where we're talking about because they did not live here and grow up here, those kind of things. I hope you enjoyed this little talk about location, distances, and directions in Appalachia. And I really mean what I said at the beginning. Whether you live just down the road a little ways, a little piece down the road, or a fur piece all the way across the ocean in another country, or summers in between, I really appreciate you dropping by to help me celebrate Appalachia. And I hope that you'll continue to do just that. Drop back by often to help me celebrate Appalachia.